Hi everyone, it's Wednesday, time for Wisdom Wednesday. I'm going to take some time this week to kind of walk through some fairly nerdy material, but I think it's important because understanding what it is about what we're seeing that has been done to our food in our drinks in terms of adding high fructose corn syrup in so many processed items, and in particular sugar drinks and fruit drinks and different things like that, and trying to understand why this has become such a problem for not only just weight management in terms of just calories, but there are essential metabolic issues that occur with fructose in particular that actually set us up for weight gain, metabolic syndrome, hypertension, even gout, things like this. So I wanted to walk through some of the nerdy science associated with this so that maybe this will help us understand why we really need to do everything we can to stay away from outside sources of fructose or sources of fructose that are man-made and not really found in nature as much. So to try to understand this, I think it's important to kind of get a quick feel for what it is. So it's a sugar, and table sugar is a combination of both glucose and fructose. We know that fruits have some fructose in them, and certainly vegetables have some fructose, and wine in particular, or alcohol in particular, can also be thought of to follow some of this in the way of the pathways that we'll talk a little bit about as it happens in the body. But what happens with fructose in particular is that some of it is metabolized in our gut, but when there's an overabundance, it comes into the liver, and the liver then is responsible for most of the metabolism from there. There are other areas in the body, the kidneys and the brain, that can do some of the metabolic work, but in the liver in particular, what happens is that this fructose is metabolized by an enzyme that takes the phosphorus off of ATP, and ATP is that energy molecule in our body. And ATP, because of its name, if you will, adenosine triphosphate, has 3 phosphate on it. And this enzyme takes the phosphate off of the ATP. It takes off 1, and then it takes off 2, and it takes off 3. So we get ATP down to ADP, adenosine diphosphate, and then ADP down to AMP, adenosine monophosphate. And then that is consumed and broken down further, essentially down a pathway into uric acid. Now, uric acid is then taken up into the mitochondria, increases what we call reactive oxygen species or oxidative stress. And through all of this, what happens is, first of all, we consume energy. We are then not able to take that molecule as it's broken down to ATP to ADP and AMP and rephosphorylate it into more energy. It's taken away into and metabolized into uric acid, which then depletes energy. So when we eat fructose in significant amounts, let's say you just have a Coke with high fructose corn syrup in it, you're actually taking away energy and not creating it. And then you're setting yourself up for higher aspects and metabolic molecules, in particular uric acid, which then can increase your risk for hypertension or high blood pressure. And also, it depletes the ability of the body to break down fat, and it also increases the body's ability to de novo or make new fat from those sources of metabolic byproducts of fructose metabolism. So it's, in its essence, it is a mechanism that works beautifully when there's scarcity of food. But you and I both know we don't live in a time where we have scarcity of food. And we don't live in a time where we have this seasonal need to put on extra fat when winter is coming and there may be scarcity of food. So we are overfilling our bodies with this fructose energy. The other thing that can happen, not only does this happen when you ingest fructose, but the other thing that's really frustrating and concerning is that when you overdo glucose, you can actually convert glucose into fructose and send everything again down this pathway of energy depletion, fat accumulation, and loss of the ability to absorb fat, and increase uric acid, which increases hypertension. Now, what this means is that we are seeing all of this happening in younger and younger and younger people. There is 3 to 10%, depending on who you read, increase in hypertension in young people. And certainly we know we're seeing more diabetes in younger people. So I thought it was fascinating as I listened to this podcast recently, in really putting this together and understanding that you can have a little bit of fructose, because if you don't overdo it, then the gut in its ability can metabolize all of that, and it doesn't make its way to the liver to go through these real negative types of metabolic pathways that deplete energy and increase inflammation and increase fat making, if you will, and decreasing fat burning. And so I think that most of us understand that we have to kind of stay low carb. We're into intermittent fasting, but the recognition of what processed foods and fast foods do, and certainly sugary type drinks, it's not just a calorie thing. There's so much more that's happening at a metabolic level, and hopefully you've gotten a little bit of sense of why in particular this increase in overall sugar, and in particular fructose, the component of sugar, is very detrimental to our health and wellness, in particular over time. So if you have any questions or any other thoughts on this, let me know. But we may spend some more time discussing uric acid and the negative aspects of that in terms of hypertension and gout, and what it does in terms of increasing oxidative stress and lowering energy and increasing inflammation. These things all continue to take place. So hopefully this gives you a bit more, even though quite nerdy, incentive to really think about those things that you are putting into your body and what's going to happen downstream. And that you just, as we know, we can't out-exercise a bad diet. It really has to start with our fork and mindfulness, and understanding if you're going to make that decision to have something that has a lot of high fructose corn syrup or a lot of fructose in general, that you know that there are things that are going to happen that have negative impact on our health and wellness. All right, guys, that's it for today. Have a great week, and we'll talk again next week.